The chair scraped so hard against the marble floor that every head in Arya restaurant turned. Seo Ji-yeon was on her feet before the sound even died. One manicured finger pointed like a loaded weapon directly at Elena Brooks' face. "Manager." Her voice cut through the soft piano music like a blade. "Manager." Elena did not flinch. She sat with her back straight, both hands resting on the white tablecloth, her dark brown eyes steady and unreadable. She had walked into boardrooms full of men twice her age who had tried to shrink her. She was not about to let a woman in a Chanel suit and borrowed arrogance do what they could not. But that did not mean the words did not land. They always landed. "I said." Seo Ji-yeon lowered her voice just enough to make it more dangerous. "She does not belong here. Look at her. She looks like she wandered in from the street." A woman at the next table pretended to check her phone. A couple near the window suddenly found their soup fascinating. The kind of silence that was not really silence, it was the sound of people choosing not to see. Elena exhaled slowly through her nose. She picked up her water glass, took one calm sip, and set it down without a sound. Inside, something was burning. The restaurant manager, a thin, nervous man named Mr. Yu, appeared from behind a partition with the energy of someone who had been dreading this moment his entire career. "Madam Seo," he started. "Do not Madam Seo me." She pointed again at Elena. "Remove her. She is sitting in my section. She is disturbing my lunch." "She has disturbed nothing." Mr. Yu's voice had the courage of wet paper. "Her presence is the disturbance." Seo Ji-yeon's eyes dragged over Elena slowly, deliberately, the way someone examines something they are deciding whether to step on. This is a member's restaurant, not a charity kitchen. Someone like her. Someone like me. Elena said it quietly. Not a question. A mirror held up. Seo Ji-yeon blinked. She had not expected Elena to speak. People being humiliated were supposed to go small and quiet. That was how this was supposed to work. "Yes." She lifted her chin. "Someone. Like you." The piano kept playing. A fork clinked against a plate somewhere. Mr. Yu looked like he was calculating how fast he could resign. And then, yeah, every single head turned. Standing 3 feet away, fists clenched at his sides, was the smallest, most furious person Arya restaurant had ever seen. He could not have been older than 5. The charcoal black suit he wore was perfectly fitted, his tiny collar sharp, his shoes mirror polished. His jaw was set with the kind of determination that did not belong on a 5-year-old's face. His eyes, dark, fierce, and completely unafraid, were locked on Seo Ji-yeon like 2 small flames. He had been sitting at the corner table waiting for his meal when he heard it. He had watched the whole thing from behind a menu he could barely hold up, and something in his little chest had pulled so tight it snapped. He walked straight to Seo Ji-yeon and kicked her hard on the shin. "Ow! You do not talk to my mom like that." The restaurant went completely still. Seo Ji-yeon grabbed her leg, her composure cracking for the first time. Whose child is this? Where is the? My dad will fix you." Chinmay's voice did not shake. His bottom lip did, just slightly, but his voice did not. "Do you know who my dad is? Do you?" Seo Ji-yeon stared at him. Then she looked around the restaurant for a parent, a nanny, anyone responsible for this miniature terror. There was no one. "Someone remove this child. Do not talk to him." Elena's voice came out low and firm. She had risen from her seat without anyone noticing. She was tall, the kind of tall that a room feels. She stepped between Chinmay and Seo Ji-yeon without drama, without performance, and looked down at the woman with an expression that had closed deals, ended careers, and rebuilt companies from rubble. "Do not talk to him," she said again. Chinmay looked up at Elena. Something moved across his small face. Relief, recognition, something that had no name yet but felt like coming home. He reached up and took her hand, just like that. No hesitation, no asking. Elena looked down at the small hand wrapped around 3 of her fingers and felt something crack open quietly in the center of her chest. Seo Ji-yeon looked between them, this tall, composed black woman and this fierce little Korean boy holding her hand like she was the most important person in the building, and something uncertain moved behind her eyes for the first time. I do not know what performance this is. It is not a performance, Chinmay said flatly, still holding Elena's hand, still staring up at Seo Ji-yeon. You were rude to my mom and my dad does not like when people are rude to our family. I am not your. Elena started softly. You are. He said it simply. Completely. Can we go home now? Daddy will be home in 20 minutes and Mr. J is outside. Welcome to Black Silk Stories, the home of Afro-Korean stories that hit different. Subscribe, drop a comment, and do not go anywhere. This is only the beginning. Elena Brooks had built ENB Group of companies from a single office, a laptop, and a refusal to be told no. She had negotiated with governments. She had sat across tables from men who thought her beauty was an invitation and her ambition was a mistake. She had worn every version of strong that the world asked of her. Nothing had prepared her for a 5-year-old boy in a charcoal suit taking her hand and calling her mom like it was already decided. What is your name? She asked him as they walked toward the exit, his hand still in hers, his little legs moving with the kind of purpose that suggested he had somewhere important to be at all times. Chinmay. He looked up at her briefly. What is yours? Elena. He tested it quietly. Elena. Then, I will call you Mom. She almost stopped walking. You cannot just. Why not? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Tried again. Because we just met. I know. He pushed through the restaurant door with his free hand, completely unbothered. But I knew when I saw you. Knew what? He looked up at her with those serious dark eyes. And for a moment Elena felt like she was the child and he was something much older and wiser dressed up in a small suit. That you were mine, he said. Outside, the afternoon Seoul air was warm and sharp. And there they were. 5 black Ferraris lined up along the curb like a sentence written in money. 3 men in dark suits stood at attention near the lead car. And at the door of the first Ferrari, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his 40s with a face carved from patience and quiet authority stood waiting. Mr. J. He saw Chinmay and the tension in his shoulders released visibly. Then his eyes moved to Elena and something shifted in his expression. Not surprise exactly, more like recalibration. Young master. He dipped his head. Then with careful respect. Ma'am. Mr. J, this is my mom, Chinmay announced, pulling Elena forward by the hand. Her name is Elena. She will be coming home with us. Mr. J looked at Elena. Elena looked at Mr. J. She started. He does this, Mr. J said quietly, the corner of his mouth almost moving. He decides things. I can hear you, Chinmay said, already climbing into the Ferrari with the ease of someone who had been doing it his whole life. He patted the seat beside him. Mom, come on. Elena stood on the pavement of one of Seoul's most expensive streets, next to 5 Ferraris, being invited into a car by a 5-year-old who had just kicked a woman on her behalf and decided her entire future in the space of 10 minutes. She was a billionaire. She ran 4 companies across 3 continents. She had a board meeting in the morning and a flight to Singapore on Thursday. She got in the car. The inside of the Ferrari smelled like leather and something expensive she could not name. Chinmay sat beside her with the seatbelt already clicked. His small hands folded in his lap, his expression peaceful now. The fury from the restaurant had settled into something quieter. Satisfaction, maybe. Are you going to call your father? Elena asked. Yes. He pulled out a phone, an actual phone, slim and black, and dialed with the focus of a small executive. He held it to his ear and waited. 1 ring. 2. Chinmay. The voice that came through was low, controlled, and carried the kind of weight that did not need volume to be felt. Chinmay's face opened like a window. Appa, where are you? Mr. J said you left the table. I am in the car. We are coming home. A pause. Appa, something happened. Silence on the line. Then carefully, tell me. A lady was being rude to someone in the restaurant. She was being very mean and classless, and she told the manager to remove her, and she said bad things. Another silence. Elena watched Chinmay's profile as he spoke. His jaw tightened slightly, the way a child does when they are trying to hold on to composure they learn from watching adults. I kicked her, he added. Chinmay. On the leg. Not the face. Elena pressed her lips together very hard. We will discuss that when you get home, Chinhay said. His voice had not changed temperature. That somehow made it more serious. Okay. Chinmay nodded. Appa, I also found my mom. Complete silence. Elena felt it even through a phone that was not hers. Say that again, Chinhay said slowly. I found my mom. Her name is Elena. She is sitting next to me. She is very tall and she smells nice, and she did not go small when the mean lady was shouting at her. I want her to come home with us. He paused. I already decided. The silence stretched long enough to have its own weight. Put her on the phone, Chinhay said finally. Chinmay held the phone out to Elena with the calm confidence of someone delivering perfectly organized paperwork. He wants to talk to you. Elena stared at the phone. In 20 years of business, she had taken calls from presidents, investors, and hostile takeover specialists. Her hand was steady as she took it. Hello, she said. Who are you? It was not asked. It was examined. Elena Brooks. She kept her voice even. Founder of ENB Group of Companies. I was having lunch. Your son apparently disagreed with how someone was treating me and decided to intervene. A beat. He kicked her. On the shin. With considerable commitment. Something moved in the silence. It might have been the beginning of something that was not quite a laugh but lived next door to one. Are you in my car? Chinhay asked. It appears so. Did anyone force you? Your 5-year-old son is surprisingly difficult to refuse. This time the silence was different. Warmer, more complicated. Elena could not see his face, but she felt the shift in it. I will be home in 15 minutes, Chinhay said. Do not let him talk you into anything else before I get there. The line went dead. Elena lowered the phone slowly. Chinmay was watching her with those serious eyes, waiting. He is coming home, she said. Chinmay nodded like this was always the plan. Like everything was going exactly as it was supposed to. He turned to look out the window at Seoul passing by. The glass towers and neon signs and the city that his father owned pieces of, and he hummed something soft under his breath. Elena watched him. This small boy who had walked into her humiliation like a tiny soldier and walked out with her hand. Who had called her mom without apology or explanation. Who had looked at her like she was not a stranger at all but something found. Her chest did that cracking thing again. She looked out her own window. Seoul blurred past in golden glass. And somewhere across the city, in a building that carried his name in silence rather than signage, Chinhay Park set down a document he would not remember the contents of, stood up from his chair, and reached for his jacket. His son had called. That was always enough. The house was not what Elena expected. She did not know what she expected exactly. Something cold maybe, something that announced power the way powerful men usually announced it. Glass walls and sharp edges and art that cost more than it felt. But the house that the 5 Ferraris pulled up to was warm in a way that surprised her. Large, yes. Gated, yes. The kind of property that sat behind walls in silence and said nothing to the street. But the moment the gates opened and the car moved through, there were trees. Actual trees, old ones, lining the path like they had been there long before the house and would be there long after. Chinmay was out of the car before Mr. J fully stopped it. Careful, Elena said automatically. He looked back at her with a small grin. The first real grin she had seen from him. Different from the fierce restaurant face, younger, softer. I always land on my feet, he said, and ran toward the front door. Elena stepped out slowly. Mr. J stood at the car door, his face professionally neutral, but his eyes carried something she was beginning to recognize as barely contained amusement. "He has never done this before," Mr. J said quietly as they walked toward the entrance. "Brought someone home. Called someone that." Elena glanced at him. "How long have you worked for his father?" 11 years. "And in 11 years? Mr. J considered the question with the care of someone who measured words like currency. "Young Master Chinmay has never once called anyone Mom." He paused at the front door and held it open for her. He pointed at you and decided, "That is not nothing, Miss Brooks. Not in this house." Elena walked inside. The interior was quiet the way expensive things are quiet. Not empty, but settled. Dark wood and low lighting and the smell of something being cooked somewhere deep in the house. A wide staircase. Tall ceilings. And on the wall directly ahead, a single large photograph in a simple black frame. A woman. Korean. Young and laughing, caught mid-turn like she did not know the camera was there. Beautiful in the uncomplicated way of people who are not thinking about being beautiful. Elena looked at the photograph for a moment. She did not ask, but something in her chest understood. "Mom used to laugh like that all the time," Chinmay said from behind her. She turned. He had reappeared without shoes now, standing on the wooden floor in his suit and small socked feet, looking up at the photograph with an expression that was too old and too careful for a 5-year-old's face. "She was very pretty," Elena said. "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. "She died when I was 2. I do not remember her face from real life. Only from pictures." He said it without drama, the way children sometimes say the heaviest things, plainly, because they have not yet learned to dress pain in performance. "Appa keeps that picture there so I do not forget her." Elena crouched down so she was at his level. He looked at her steadily. "I am sorry," she said. "Truly." He studied her face the way he had in the restaurant, that searching certain look. "You have kind eyes," he said. She had kind eyes too. "That is how I knew." Elena did not trust her voice for a moment. She nodded once. Chinmay reached out and straightened her collar, a small precise gesture that must have been something he had seen his father do. "You do not have to be sad," he said. "You are here now." The front door opened. Chinmay Park did not enter a room. He arrived in it. He was tall, taller than Elena had built him in her mind from the voice on the phone, and he wore a dark suit that had not been loosened despite whatever the day had handed him. His face was angular and composed, the face of a man who had decided long ago that the world would read nothing from it that he did not choose to show. His eyes were dark, sharp, and they moved across the room with the quiet efficiency of someone who processed threat and safety in the same breath. They found Chinmay first. Something in his expression shifted, not softened exactly, but opened, the way a fist slowly becomes a hand. "Appa!" Chinmay crossed the room and Chinmay caught him in one smooth motion, lifting him without disrupting a single thing about his own composure. Chinmay wrapped both arms around his father's neck and pressed his face there briefly. "You kicked a woman," Chinmay said into his son's hair. "She deserved it. That is not how we decide who deserves things." "You would have done worse," Chinmay said simply. Chinmay said nothing to that. He set Chinmay down and straightened, and his eyes moved across the room to Elena. She had stood when he came in. She was not sure why, instinct maybe, or the same thing that made people stand when the temperature in a room changed. She was not a woman who stood for anyone without reason. She ran 4 companies. She had reasons to sit, but she was standing. He crossed to her slowly, not rushed. Everything about this man was deliberate. The steps, the silence, the way his eyes held hers without aggression but without any softness either. Just assessment. Direct and completely unashamed. "Elena Brooks," he said. "Chinmay Park," she replied. A pause. Something moved between them, not quite recognition, not quite electricity. Something quieter than both. The way two people sometimes meet and the air between them has to reconfigure slightly to make room. You are younger than I expected, he said. You are less frightening than I expected, she replied. His eyes changed. Still dark, still measured, but something behind them shifted almost imperceptibly. You were told to expect frightening? You are the most feared man in Seoul. It travels. And yet you got in my car. Your son asked nicely. Shin-hye looked at Chin-mei, who was leaning against the wall watching them both with the quiet satisfaction of someone watching a plan come together. Did you behave? Chin-hye asked him. I was excellent, Chin-mei said. You kicked a woman. After she was rude to Mom. That is correct behavior. Chin-hye turned back to Elena. I apologize for the disruption to your afternoon. He defended me, Elena said. I do not need an apology for that. Something in Chin-hye's jaw shifted. He told me what happened in the restaurant. His voice stayed even but his eyes did not. Seo Ji-yeon. The name landed differently in his mouth. Not louder, not harder, just final the way a door sounds when it is locked from the inside. She will not be a problem again, he said simply. Elena held his gaze. I fight my own battles, Mr. Park. I know. He said it without condescension, without the faint patronizing note that men sometimes wrapped around acknowledgement. He said it like fact. Like he had already read her and filed the information carefully. But you are in my house now. What happens to people who disrespect those in my house is my business. The room was very quiet. Appa, Chin-mei said from the wall. They both looked at him. Can Elena stay for dinner? Dinner was not what she planned. Elena had a 6 p.m. call with her Singapore office and 2 contracts waiting on her laptop at the hotel. She had a schedule, a routine, and a very clear understanding of how her evenings were supposed to move. She stayed for dinner. The dining table was large enough for 12 but was set for 3 by the time they sat down. The food was brought by a quiet woman named Mrs. O who looked at Elena with open warm curiosity and set her plate down with the particular care of someone who had not seen this table set for 3 in a long time. Chin-mei sat between them. He ate with the serious attention of someone who had been taught that meals were important. He asked Elena questions between bites. What did her company do? Did she have a big office? Did she like Seoul? Did she know how to play baduk because his father was teaching him and he was not very good yet? I am learning, he corrected himself. I am getting better. He is getting better, Chin-hye confirmed, in the tone of a man who did not offer empty reassurance. Elena watched them. The way Chin-hye cut Chin-mei's meat without being asked. The way Chin-mei leaned slightly toward his father when he talked, orbiting him naturally without needing to touch him. The way Chin-hye listened to his son, not with the distracted half-attention of busy people humoring small children, but fully turning his face toward him, answering like the questions mattered. Because they did. That was clear. You are staring, Chin-hye said without looking up from his plate. Elena did not pretend she was not. You are a good father. He looked up then. She met his eyes across Chin-mei's head. He makes it uncomplicated, Chin-hye said. Love usually does, Elena said. It is people who complicate it. Chin-hye held her gaze for a moment that was 2 seconds longer than necessary. Then he looked back at his plate. Chin-mei looked at Elena, then at his father, then back at Elena. He picked up his spoon and ate his soup and said nothing at all. He was 5 years old and he had already done enough. After dinner, Chin-mei fell asleep on the sitting room couch with his head on Elena's lap before anyone had agreed that was going to happen. One moment he was telling her about his school and the next his eyes were closing and his voice was trailing and then he was simply completely out. Elena sat very still. She did not know how to extract herself without waking him, and she was not entirely sure she wanted to try. Chin-hye sat across from them in a single chair, his jacket off now, his sleeves rolled to the elbow, a glass of something amber in his hand. He was watching his son sleep with an expression Elena had not seen on his face yet. Unguarded, raw at the edges in the way that men who carry everything alone sometimes look when they think no one is watching. She was watching. "How long has it been?" she asked quietly. "Since his mother." 3 years. He did not look up from Chinmay. "He was 2. I was told he would not remember. That it would be easier." He turned the glass slowly in his hand. "He remembers everything. He just keeps it quiet." "Like his father," Elena said. Chinmay looked at her. For the first time since he had walked through the door, something in his face did not have a next move. He just looked at her the way people look at something that has said exactly the true thing at exactly the wrong and right moment. "He chose well," Chinmay said finally, quietly, like it cost him something small to say it out loud. Elena looked down at Chinmay's sleeping face. The little suit was rumpled now, his collar loosened, his fierce restaurant face completely gone. He looked exactly what he was. A small boy who had decided something with his whole heart and gone to sleep certain he was right. "He is something else," she said softly. "Yes." Chinmay's voice was low. "He is the only thing I have never doubted." The house was quiet around them. Soul hummed somewhere beyond the trees. And in the sitting room of the most feared man in the city, a little boy in a rumpled charcoal suit slept in the lap of a woman he had chosen that afternoon and breathed like everything was already settled. Maybe it was. Elena did not leave until after 10. Chinmay walked her to the car himself. They stood outside in the cool night air, and the silence between them was the kind that had already started becoming familiar. Not empty, not awkward, but the beginning of a language only 2 people build together. "He will ask about you tomorrow," Chinmay said. "I know. And the day after. I know that too." He looked at her in the low light of the driveway, this woman who had sat in the same room as his grief and his son and his silence and had not tried to fix any of it. Just sat, just stayed, just been present in the way that some people know how to be without being taught. "Elena Brooks," he said. "Chinmay Park," she said back. A pause. Small. Heavy with everything that had not been said yet and did not need to be. "Not tonight." "Drive safely," he said. She got in the car. Mr. J pulled away slowly down the tree-lined path, and she did not look back, but she felt it. The way you feel someone watching you leave because they have already started thinking about when you will return. Inside, Chinmay stood in the driveway long after the last Ferrari tail light disappeared. Then he went back inside. Upstairs, he stood in the doorway of Chinmay's room where Mrs. O had put him to bed already, small and still under covers, one sock somehow gone, his little face completely at peace. Chinmay leaned against the doorframe and looked at his son for a long moment. "You decided," he said softly. Not a question. Not a reprimand. Chinmay did not stir. Chinmay pulled the door half closed, walked down the hall, and for the first time in 3 years did not stand at the window of his room looking at nothing. He sat on the edge of his bed and thought about kind eyes. And this, beloved, is where it begins. Not with a grand gesture, not with fireworks or fate announced loudly, but with a 5-year-old boy in a charcoal suit who looked at a woman across a restaurant and knew, the way children know things that adults have forgotten how to trust, that she was already theirs. Soul has seen many love stories, but it has never seen one that started with a kick on a shin and ended with a billionaire falling asleep on a stranger's lap. It is only the beginning. You just finished part 1 of Daddy, I Brought You Someone, a Black Silk Stories original. If this story moved something in you, you are exactly where you belong. Black Silk Stories is the home of Afro-Korean stories that hit different, stories that do not ask permission to take up space, to love loudly, and to matter deeply. Subscribe. Drop a comment below. Share this with someone who needs a story like this in their life. Chinmay is not done. Chinmay has barely begun. And Elena Brooks did not come to Soul to fall in love, but Soul has its own plans. We will see you in part 2.